Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Sabata with the Equatorial Advocacy Foundation. I'm the Director for Resource Mobilization and Project Management. Today, I would like to discuss with you a very simple question. That is, has the SPLM revolution accomplished its objective? Or let's put it this way. Is it worth having the revolution fought? If I ask the question whether the SPLM revolution has accomplished its objective, the answer is no, first of all. And let me explain why. Before I would explain whether the revolution is even worth having it. The answer is no, because a revolution, a political organization that declares a movement will be determined as an organization that has won only if the set objectives or the goals of the organization has been achieved. This then takes us to ask ourselves whether SPLM has accomplished its objectives or goals. The answer is no, because when Dr. Garang talked about the vision of the SPLM, even from the name of the organization, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, from the name itself of the movement, you will realize that it was not set to separate South Sudan. And Garang spoke about the vision of New Sudan in the context of Sudan, the current northern Sudan, included, because he gave a couple of what he called modules. There was module 1, 2, 3, 4, and he ruled out module 3 and 4. And he said 4 is hypothetical. That is, if South Sudan was to be established such that it will be predominantly the African indigenous people, and they will just simply accommodate the northern Muslims, he said that is hypothetical, and he said that will be a recipe to war because the Muslims will refuse. He said the third module is the one which what he termed as the northern regime. That was the status quo, actually. That is where the northern regime is trying to build an Islamic Arab state and simply trying to accommodate the other African indigenous people. And of course, when I'm talking about African indigenous people, I'm talking about the tribes of the South Sudan. And he said the northern Muslims were only 63%, so it will not be right for them to create an Islamic Arab state and simply accommodate the other indigenous African tribes. So he also ruled that one out. Then he talked about the first module, where he drew 2 circles, that is the north and the south coming together under what is called a confederate system of governance. And a confederate here, that means it's like he gave an analogy of 2 roommates, people who have just come, all right, to live together. So there is no higher authority. The 2 who have come to live together simply present certain terms by which they will accommodate themselves, and the terms are the gray areas that is in the middle here. These are the common interests upon which they can accommodate themselves, but there is no any higher authority, and that brings in what is called a confederate system. because if there is another higher authority out of that, then that will make it a federation instead of a confederation. Then he said that module 1 will eventually blend into the second module, which he recommends. That is when the communities from the southern indigenous African societies start to intermingle with the northerners, and eventually, in the process of doing that, they will eventually bring a form of culture. They will marry the culture from these indigenous African societies and the northerners. When they come together, they will formulate a form of a culture in the middle here, upon which then, as they intermingle and as time go by, they will decide how they would want to formulate a higher authority then that will govern all of them, and eventually pretty much making it a melting pot between the two, and whether they will leave it to be a federal system where there will be authority on the top managing kind of some modules here, or authority on the top managing this group and this group, or whether it will eventually come into more of a unitary system where they will just kind of form a uniform or one whole block or society. Then that will then be determined in the future. Those were the visions that Dr. Garang was speaking, and if you realize that vision does not exclude the northern part of Sudan. It included the northern part of Sudan. So when John Garang was speaking about the vision of the new Sudan, that was in the context of basically North Sudan also included. But of course, things didn't work out that way, and the comprehensive peace agreement that was signed in Nyavasha then eventually gave the South a referendum, and the people went and voted for separation. So that means the objective, the goal of the SPLM with the vision of what is called New Sudan in the module that Garang had provided basically came to an end, because the Nyavasha agreement basically produced an agreement where a referendum was central, and then the other provisions simply provided a platform where a referendum can then take place. And of course that includes the provision of a Bia administrative area. And the issues of the border, those was provisions that were also included. But the main thing was basically referendum. And then when a referendum was decided 6 years later, after the comprehensive peace agreement was signed, of course, the country split. So basically South Sudan came as a whole. Now North Sudan is not part of it. So basically the whole vision of New Sudan that was provided in the context that North Sudan was going to be included now has altered completely. And now we would say the goals of the SPLM, of course, were not accomplished. The vision of SPLM was not accomplished. We have come to a point where we have now a new country altogether, South Sudan, and that is South Sudan. Now, this is this. So SPLM failed its goal. Halas. But the good thing is that fight has prepared a platform where then the people of South came and voted for what is called South Sudan. Now, SPLM did not have vision of what is called South Sudan. That is based on what they have set in their goals. They did not have a vision of South Sudan. But that war was able to provide an atmosphere where South Sudan came to be. Now South Sudan have come. It was born on July 9, 2011, and the people celebrated. But the question I would like to discuss here is it worth? Is the revolution even worth undertaking? Right now, as we speak, I think that the cadres who are running the regime in South Sudan is making it worthless. It is those cadres who are running the regime right now is making the fact that we have is making the fact that the revolution is worthless, because as we know, John Garang himself said that there is no meaning to a revolution if the revolution later does not bring happiness in the lives of the people. Would we say that the people of South Sudan right now are happy in the current situation? I doubt it, because the outcome of this revolution that has actually produced an atmosphere where we have become a country has become worthless. At what point has it become worthless? It has become worthless at a point where the SPLM has failed to manage the nation of what I would say the southern Sudanese. It would have been worthful, or rather, it would have been worth if the cadres did the following. When the referendum was carried and the country came to be, if the cadres then, through a process of what I would say, let me put it this way, through a constitutional making process, the cadres commissioned what is called technocrats with tasks to build administrative institutions to provide services on basic necessities: healthcare, education, providing construction of network of roads. You know, these are very vital to connect people from one point to another and also connect the entire country. Build those structures for our judiciary system so that justice will eventually be able to be adjudicated, because the concept of justice was preached as to be one of the things that the movement was fought upon. You know, justice, equality, and prosperity. So for justice and equality to happen, it is very vital to have judiciary structures that can basically bring about justice and also make sure that the laws are applied to people equally. In this way, to bring those concepts into reality. The cadres failed to do this. The cadres failed to do this. So right now what we are seeing is the nation of the South Sudanese are regressing to what is called older times, you know, during the primitive times, the way they lived before the colonial era, how people basically upheld to what is called traditional beliefs, beliefs that are not justifiable by sciences or no form of any technology. Those ideas, those primitive ideas, because of now lack of properly set administrative structures from the cadres of the revolutionaries, the people are now left, the nation, and you know, the people, socio-culturally, they are instituted in tribes. And those tribes basically are upholding to ideas that are primitive, and I call it primitive because those are ideas that are not scientifically backed by any form. And the fact that the people are now left vulnerable to those primitive ideas, if you realize the nation, the people of South Sudan, are now retracting and finding comfort in what is called tribes, you see. And not only that, but you might have realized right now that even security of what is called communities, security of the people, okay, within those tribes, are not even in the hands of what is called the state authorities, the government. No. Instead, those tribes are forming some mechanisms to defend their tribal territories, their ancestral lands, and they are pretty much, putting their loyalties to their chiefs, and so basically people are regressing similar to those days before the colonial era. You have with the people of Nuer, they have what is called the Red Army or the White Army, and when you look at the people of Bahar al-Ghazal, they also have their own Matianganyor, or they have their own fighting units, tribal fighting units, that are right now, some of them are taken and basically given uniforms, and now are part of what is called the administrative units within the military institution. And this is another blunder. They are not even well trained. When you come to the site of the Equatoria, sometimes back had developed what was called the how do you call it, the Arrow Boys, you see. And as insecurity continues, heaven knows what is going to happen down the road. The Murle are there, they only trust themselves, the Cobra group. So you have the nation kind of having all those tribal fighting units, and these tribal fighting units are armed, all right, and they are all claiming to be protecting what is called ancestral lands. These are a regressive style of life. This is happening because the cadres of revolutionaries failed to put together the very institutions that could have provided security to what is called the integrity of the entire territory of the South Sudan. There could have been a properly trained security that are national in character. All right, and those people would be, well, they are supposed to be trained such that they will be very good to protect the entire nation, so that then the head of state or the state can disarm what is called these fighting units with orders, and the local leaders of the fighting units will not feel as though their tribesmen and women and children will be vulnerable to insecurity when those local units are basically disarmed, if possible even dismantled through certain processes. They can be dismantled. Educational institutions will be put in place for even adults. What is called courses for training Najarene and mechanics and all that could be put in place. Those people can be transformed. They can be taught the language that's used at a national level, you know, the basic things here and there for them to communicate through certain programs, so that the country will eventually work their way out in order to prepare people to be going down the path or coming down the path to meet the 21st century standards or ways of life. But the fact that the cadres have failed to do that, the cadres of the revolutionaries are very busy taking the resources of the country, pocketing them, building mansions, building businesses out of country, leaving the communities vulnerable to those primitive ideas. They are basically replicating those ideas amongst themselves. Makes the whole concept of the revolution worthless. The other day, I was very surprised in Mukwaya. The government forces, people who are wearing uniform, supposedly supposed to go and fight with the National Salvation Front forces. They went, I think they clashed, whatever the result of that fight was. Came then, entered into the territory of Mukwaya and drew some citizens. These are women, children, looted their properties, and about 5 or even more got killed. Houses got burned. What was that for? And yet these are government troops who are doing such kind of atrocities on citizens, not rebels, citizens who are not even carrying guns, citizens who are not able to, who don't even have guns in their hands. And eventually the people, even people in the West, those who might have gone to school in the West, lived in the West for quite a while, that you might think have become civil enough or civilized enough, basically are rejoicing, calling the victims, the citizens who have been chased out, cowards and all those. Just imagine citizens who have been sent out by government troops to be called cowards. So what could they have done? They are citizens. Anyways, let me not even get there. Couple of days down the road, you hear Murle victimizing Lao Nuer, kids, women. I've seen the video. Those are kids. Those are kids that should be going to school. Women who should be going to some educational programs where they can knit gufa and do some other stuff, trained, even tailoring, so that they can use those skills to survive, put stuff in the market. But then they get victimized like that. For what reason? For the reason that the cadres of the revolutionaries have failed to put any program to get the people to a certain vision that they had in their minds. This is simply because the vision of the SPLM, which Dr. Garang articulated, ended up somewhere, because eventually it was in the context of Sudan but right now we have an independent country, and with this independent country, the cadres who came in don't seem to have anything in their minds other than just taking resources of the country. So the country is now spiraling to that direction, and there is no clear point where you would say, well, it looks like this is the turning point where the country eventually is going to spiral away from the direction it is heading right now. It looks like it's just heading towards that direction, you know. Dinkabor youth fighting with Murle youth, and to make it worse, there are rumors. Those are just rumors. I don't know if they are justifiable, that even some of these youth of the Murle are armed by some people who are responsible with or who are sitting in what is called the government of South Sudan. I mean, the entire point I'm trying to make here, guys, is what do we think? Are we really progressing? You know, if we are progressing, I mean, people should be, there should be some educational programs, there should be some developmental programs going on, there should be institutions that are put together here and there, systems of healthcare, systems of education, all this should be in place. Because right now in the 21st century, if you're going to be serving the people, you serve the people through institutions. And those institutions get created or established by technocrats. You don't serve institutions just by sitting at a seat somewhere, calling yourself a president, and putting directives. So no, people are not served like that in the 21st century. So basically, if you guys are able to picture the picture that I've already painted about where we are going, you will realize that we are regressing. We are basically coiling back even the little education that was received all along during the Hakuma Bita 1977 or 1972 of the Addis Ababa Agreement. That education that we have obtained all the way where we are right now, it looks like this, from just our way of life, things seem to be going back, because we are not coming together to become a melting community or melting society, substituting our ideas, the traditional ideas, with ideas that are scientifically backed. You know, we are not doing that. Why? Because there is a vacuum that the revolutionaries who have basically installed a state over the nation, the Southerners, have not come with clear programs to propel the community to become vibrantly going towards a particular vision, and instead leaving the community to retract on what is called their comfort zones, on their comfort cocoons. That by itself, I say, makes this revolution worthless. It makes this revolution worthless. This is something that I think I should share with you, and if this should be stopped somewhere, and then people projecting to start going towards a positive direction, so that people will become happy and progress and start moving towards the 21st century, we need a proper dialogue, brothers and sisters. This notion of supporting each other along tribal lines, I think, doesn't help. To an extent, your fellow brother goes with a uniform on the body, goes and discharge another citizen from his or her house, and you supported that. 2013, we have seen people in uniform targeting Nuer from house to house. That act was sugar-coated here and there by by people from a particular tribe. I mean, where are we going? How are we going to form what is called one nation in this way? I am going to close, and in closure, I would say yes, the cadres of the revolution have rendered this revolution worthless. And don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Dr. Garang himself, the founder of the movement of the SPLM, basically is the one who has rendered this revolution worthless by saying this. Listen.
A new phase of transforming the guns and the bullets, that is military power, transforming military power into political power.
That is building the institution.
And using the political power to achieve socio-economic development rapidly.
Yes. People are clapping. I don't know if they understood.
Because there is no meaning of revolution unless it makes our people happy.
Are you guys happy?
The masses of our people, as a result, become prosperous.
Are they prosperous?
They go ahead, they advance, they get shelter,
Do they
get
advance?
food, they get clean drinking water, they get education, they get health services. Unless we provide this to our people, unless the revolution provides this to our people.
And this revolution provides these things through institutions.
Prefer a government of the NIF that provides salt to a government of the SPLA that does not provide salt. This is simple arithmetic.
Yes.
If the SPLA cannot deliver anything.
He says this is simple arithmetic. You can say this is simple common sense. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. You know. So, is the revolution successful? No. Is it the Equatorial Advocacy Foundation who is saying it? No. Equatorial Advocacy Foundation is simply analyzing. But Dr. John Garang, the founder of the SPLM movement, has already rendered this revolution worthless because it is not providing happiness to the people of South Sudan. And the SPLM goal or vision got nullified right at the time when people voted South Sudan and the country came out, because the new Sudan that was actually visualized by Dr. John Garang was in the context of Sudan also in. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much. Stay safe from COVID-19 until we meet again in another session of video. Please take care of yourself.